Hi everyone, welcome to another character analysis. Today I'll be talking about Wanderer and I'll mostly be comparing his story to that of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, as I think a lot of similarities between the two of them can be found. So let's begin. If you don't know, Frankenstein is a book about a scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who attempts to create a human by assembling various materials and bringing it to life using electricity. However, after bringing his creature to life, he actually feels disgusted by the sight of it and runs away in fear. On the other hand, Wanderer is a puppet who was made by A as a prototype for her Raiden Shogun puppet that would serve as a representative to govern Inazuma. However, since this puppet seemed to show some semblance of human emotion, A decides to let him live instead of discarding him. Both Victor Frankenstein and A, albeit for different reasons, abandoned their creations and left them wandering the world by themselves. This lack of guidance is the downfall for both characters, which is why I think they're so comparable. If you watched my previous video, you'd know I talked about how Albedo is also an artificial human, much like Wanderer. However, Albedo did have someone to guide him and was able to get a fortunate position in Mondstadt. That's where it kinda goes wrong for Wanderer. He did not have any guidance, any goal, or companionship when he first woke up after being created. Whereas Albedo gained his humanity, Wanderer slowly lost his over time, just like Frankenstein's creature lost his affinity for humanity over the course of his life. From the beginning of his life as a nameless puppet, Wanderer already felt like he did not belong, and he felt like a failure who did not meet the Electro Archon's expectations. He did not know exactly why A abandoned him, but he quickly concluded it must have been because he was unworthy in some way. For a puppet with such fragile emotions, who cried before even waking up, this kind of mindset is probably not a good way to start your life. Hence why he considers A's abandonment as his first betrayal. This is very similar to the start of Frankenstein's creature's life, as the also nameless creature woke up alone in Victor's apartment after his creator fled in fear of the appearance of the creature. The creature later tells Victor that he was barely able to distinguish his four senses, and basically that he did not understand anything. Frankenstein's creature had to figure out all aspects of life by himself, ranging from natural concepts like the elements, such as the sun, to societal hierarchies like poverty and status, but also, of course, emotions. Though he was originally abandoned by A, the puppet was found by Katsuragi, who took him to Tataratsuna. Here he becomes friends, or even family, with the swordsmiths who worked there, including Niwa and Mikoshi Nagamasa. They named him Kabuki Mono, which means something like an eccentric wanderer. This is where Kabuki Mono learns how to be human, and his newfound family truly considers him as a human, just simply one without a heart. Despite the good connection he had with the people on the island, this good fortune was short-lived when Dottore got involved. Using a disguise, he made it so that the people forging weapons at the Mikage furnace started using crystal marrow, which had dire consequences for their health. Since Kabuki Mono considers these people his family, he does his best to help and attempts to ask the Raiden Shogun for aid, without success. When he comes back, Dottore tells him that Niwa fled and abandoned everyone. He gives Kabuki Mono a box, which he uses to cleanse the Mikage furnace, yet again because he felt like he owed that to his friends. In the end of that endeavor, Dottore tells him that inside the box is a heart that Niwa got after killing someone. In reality, Dottore killed Niwa and took out his heart. Still, since Kabuki Mono was unaware of Dottore's lies, he feels deeply betrayed by Niwa's actions, especially as he considered him a great friend and, of course, as family. In the cutscene where he talks about his betrayals, he says that Niwa was consumed by fear and saw him as an abomination. This really shows that he internalized what happened and that it affected him deeply, considering it as his second betrayal. Frankenstein's creature also found a family. For a long time, he listened in on the conversations of the household. He sympathized with the troubles the family went through, even before fully understanding what these troubles were. The family that the creature was observing eventually took in an Arabian woman who did not speak their language or know about the cultural values of her new country. The family started teaching her all kinds of things about language, history, and more, which the creature took as an opportunity to learn too. After learning about crime and corruption, he struggled to understand. For a long time, I could not conceive how one man could go forth to murder his fellow, or even why there were laws and government. But when I heard details of vice and bloodshed, my wonder ceased, and I turned away with disgust and loathing. I think this sentiment parallels Kabuki Mono's feelings after Niwa's supposed murder and betrayal. He was disgusted that someone would take the life of another. After the events of Tataratsuna, Kabuki Mono is wandering through life alone again. That is, until he finds a child who he considers alike to himself. The two bond and promise to be like each other's family. For a long time, Kabuki Mono takes care of the child like the people at Tatarasuna had taken care of him. That is, until he finds the child dead in their shared home and feels betrayed that he broke their promise. The fact that Kabuki Mono considers this a betrayal already shows that he was unable to deal with grief and human emotions properly, feeling extreme anger and craving revenge instead of feeling any semblance of sadness. He even denounces his human emotions completely after all of these betrayals have happened to him. After experiencing so much rejection from humanity, Frankenstein's creature also leaves the place he previously lived. He's wandering the wilderness when he meets his creator again. He then asks Victor to hear him out and requests him to make a creature similar to him so that he has companionship that would accept him as they would be similar in nature. The creature even promises that it will never go near humanity again if Victor complies, but that he'll get revenge if he does not. He's basically demanding companionship, and when Victor decides not to give it to him, he resorts to revenge. That's kind of similar to how Kabuki Mono feels betrayed by his friend when he died, despite their promise to be a family. Both creations feel like they deserve that companionship no matter what. I mean, I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but the reaction to not receiving what they want, or in case of Kabuki Mono, losing it, is extreme and definitely shows how they are straying away from humanity and falling into violent tendencies as a consequence of loneliness. So, like I said, both Frankenstein's creature and Kabuki Mono go down a violent path after experiencing continuous rejection, betrayal, and grief. For Frankenstein's creature, this mostly focuses on seeking revenge upon Victor, his creator. He goes after two people that are very dear to Victor, his lover Elizabeth and his best friend Henry, and ends their lives. For Kabuki Mono, it's joining the Fatui. After doing so, he obtains the name Scaramouche and gives himself the name Kunikuzushi, which means Destroyer of Nations. Notably, both of these names come from stock characters from theater traditions, the Italian Commedia dell'arte and Japanese Kabuki, respectively. In Commedia dell'arte, Scaramouche is associated with traits like trickster, cowardice, but also just general villainous traits. Kunikuzushi, on the other hand, is a character who always attempts to seize the country, so both villainous character types, very befitting of this era of his life. In the time that he bore the name Kunikuzushi, he carried out manipulations that led to the downfall of most of the bladesmithing techniques in Inazuma, known as the Raiden Gokaden. This can not only be seen as revenge to what happened on Tatarasuna, but also his first act of revenge towards his creator, A. Many years later, during the Inazuma Archon quest, Traveler meets Scaramouche again in a facility where delusions were made. He attempts to kill Traveler, but gets stopped by Yae Miko, who negotiates with him and gives him something that he's wanted for a very long time, the Electronosis. After obtaining the Electronosis, the Fatui loses contact with Scaramouche. This is because he has his own agenda with the Gnosis, which he perceives as something belonging or owed to him. Using the Electro-Gnosis, Dottore and the Sumeru Academia sages managed to ascend Scaramouche into the powerful Shoki no Kami, a god of wisdom. In a way, it feels like this was another way for Scaramouche to get revenge on A and show her that he's capable of being a godly vessel. This also shows his further detachments from humanity, viewing himself as a god who's all-powerful and that is deserving of this immense power. It isn't surprising then that he was horrified when Nahida took the Gnosis from him, after her and Traveler finally defeated him. After being defeated, Nahida takes Scaramouche into custody and waits for him to wake up. As befitting of the Archon of Wisdom, she asks him to enter the Irminsul, where she made it possible for him to find out the truth about Dottore and Niwa on Tataratsuna Island. After finding this out, he does something parallel to the ending of Frankenstein. He deletes himself from the Irminsul, symbolically ending his life. I shall die, and what I now feel be no longer felt. Soon these burning miseries will be extinct. I shall ascend my funeral pile triumphantly, and exult in the agony of the torturing flames. Although Frankenstein ends with the creature's death, this symbolic death is not the end for Scaramouche. Rather, he still exists after his act in the form of Wanderer. This version of Wanderer accepts to receive the memories that Scaramouche deleted, but not before asking Nahida if he is evil, and whether she thinks there's any difference between humans and puppets. To his first question, Nahida replies that his deeds can be considered evil, and to the second one she says,
"Whoever has tasted the joys and sorrows of life in the human realm is human. Whoever has loved and lost, cried with grief, howled with rage at the tragedy of death that eclipses the miracle of life, they are human too."
According to Nahida, then, both a puppet like Wanderer and a creature like Frankenstein's would be considered human. In a way, by returning Wanderer's memory, she restores his humanity. But both Nahida and Traveler also provide something else important to Wanderer: companionship. I think his quote-unquote restored humanity can be seen in the Similanka event, as his personality seems to have calmed down a bit in a way, and he's less distant compared to, say, the Parade of Providence event. When we start the Similanka quest, we get to hear about a prophecy that mentions a hero. The hero from another world, supported by their companions, shall restore peace to this world. At first it seems like this hero is going to be Traveler, but it later becomes clear that it's actually Wanderer, which he himself calls ironic. We also find out that the antagonist of this world is Durin. By reminding Durin of his name, Wanderer performs the heroic deed from the prophecy. But what's most important is what happens after, during the time where Durin is in the mini Durin form. It turns out that Wanderer being the hero is actually not that ironic at all, as we see that Durin, both in his Similanka and real-world versions, mirror Wanderer, and therefore Frankenstein's creature, in many ways. Both of them were abandoned by their creator and rejected by humanity. It's especially apparent when Mini Durin says he wishes he was never born at all. This directly parallels this scene.
No. In fact, I wish I'd never been born at all. Never been born at all. Is that really all you wish for?
Wanderer then tells Mini Durin that it's a stupid wish, and that he can see that Durin just wants to be accepted. This proves that Wanderer has regained his humanity and does not want Mini Durin to go down the same path he did. He instead offers to be Durin's friend. Like I mentioned earlier, in Frankenstein, the creature also requested a companion from his creator, and when he did not get this, he went on a rampage. It can be said, then, that Durin and Wanderer's friendship may have prevented Duran from rampaging or enacting revenge on humans, or even developing the urge to do so. That brings me to a small diversion to a more philosophical topic. Mary Shelley's book is often associated with the nature versus nurture debate. This debate questions matters like whether or not humans are born with inherent traits, or if they are a blank slate, a tabula rasa, that is shaped and developed by their environment and experiences. Shelley is said to be inspired by the philosophies of Rousseau, who argued that humans are innately good but are corrupted by society. The creature in this book is shown as an example of that, as it's clear that the creature turned into a monster due to the fact it was abandoned and shunned by humanity, and thus eventually became a murderer, despite being born innocent. In this way, we can also start to wonder if Wanderer would have dealt with his troubles differently if A had never abandoned him, or if the events on Tatarasuna never happened. Considering that the Wanderer we met after Scaramouche erased himself from the Irminsul was very kind and humble, I think I can confidently say that the answer is yes. Without the experiences that he originally went through, Wanderer seems much more level-headed and in touch with his emotions. Of course, we do not have the exact details of what Wanderer after the Irminsul erasure went through, but we can assume that he at least experienced less misfortune. We also see that Scaramouche's Fatui seat was left vacant in our current timeline, which implies that Piero either never recruited him or he just never felt that same vengeful urge to join that Kabuki Mono had after experiencing 3 betrayals. But most importantly, I think the way Mini Duran turned out is a great example of the positive effect of nurturing and being accepted into society. Before he made friends with Wanderer and the rest of the group, Mini Duran feels very hopeless and miserable after humanity drives him away. He even says, "What's the point? As long as I'm cursed with this body, I'll never be able to live alongside them." It reminds me of many scenes in Frankenstein, but especially this line, where the creature reflects upon the fact that humans fear him due to his appearance. I had sagacity enough to discover that the unnatural hideousness of my person was the chief object of horror within those who had formerly beheld me. Both of them were considered scary to society, but just one person with an open mind and a bit of companionship could allow for their acceptance. This is where Duran's story diverts from that of Wanderer and Frankenstein's creature.
I, the hero of this world, give you my blessing. I recognize you as a resident of Simulanka. May you find acceptance in this world. Also, speaking as someone who'd like to be your friend, I wish you all the best for the future.
In conclusion, both Wanderer and Frankenstein's creature were shaped by what they went through, and despite being born innocent and unaware, turned out vengeful and evil. In Wanderer's case, this happened because he was not properly prepared and guided to live in a human society as a puppet, and was thereby unable to process his emotions properly after experiencing abandonment, betrayal, and grief. All of his experiences made him reject his humanity and emotions, eventually joining the Fatui to seek revenge and ascend to the godhood he believed he deserved. However, through Duran, Wanderer is able to create a different ending to his own story. He realizes that companionship, guidance, and acceptance would have changed the course of his life, and that's why he offers it to Duran, who seems to change for the better. This aligns with what Mary Shelley seems to convey with her book, in accordance with Rousseau's beliefs. Humans are born inherently good, and it's society that corrupts them. But maybe in Genshin Impact, this should also apply to puppets and dragons. That concludes my analysis of Wanderer compared to Frankenstein. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, and also if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye!